The recovery of the peregrine falcon is a remarkable story. It was listed as an endangered species in 1972, and now it appears that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service may remove it from that list sometime in 1999. Scientists are aware of over 1,000 pairs nesting nationally. 16 of those are right here in Idaho. They often nest on an isolated cliff, but it seems as though one pair prefers a perch with a penthouse view.
The name means wanderer, and they just follow the sun and the wind and go wherever the compass points them.
This year, the compass pointed them to the top of the Key Bank building in downtown Boise. A wild male and a female that had been raised and released by the Peregrine Fund wandered to this nest box and decided it was a great place to raise a family.
They actually showed up here in March, laid eggs probably in early April, and these young are about 30 days old now. We have three young. Of course, the fascinating thing about falcons, they go from 0 to flying in 45 days. So,
this is the first time falcons have nested in the city center of Boise. In 1988 and 89, captive chicks were brought in, raised and released on a downtown rooftop. But none of those returned to nest. Now, 10 years later, the empty box has become a home.
This is the day we get to put some jewelry on the kids. Each band has an individual number that will identify it for the rest of its life. And we use this information for tracking the distribution and the movements of these birds.
There's one right here.
Not a happy kid.
As wildlife biologist Bruce Hawk grabs one of the 3 chicks, the adult female bursts from the nest box, screaming her rage. The commotion is unbelievable. She turns and dives again, relentless, as she tries to protect her young.
Okay. She's defending, just like any predator that gets fooling with her kid. She's going to try to get close enough to scare us away and force us to leave.
It's a precarious job handling wild birds on a narrow ledge 13 stories high. But as Bruce points out, normally biologists are rappelling into nests to do this. Here, at least, you can take the elevator.
This one's a girl. You can tell by the tarsus are real thick. The females in birds of prey are larger than the males, and this one's got a much heavier foot than the male we just banded.
Boise's not the only city that has attracted peregrine falcons. Drawing the birds to urban centers was actually part of the recovery strategy for the species.
Well, it really came as a result of observations from the 1930s and 1940s when they found that falcons were coming in from the wild areas and nesting in the eastern cities. And they'd invaded Montreal and Philadelphia and Baltimore and simply moved into the city situation and initially tried to nest on buildings unsuccessfully because there was no rock ledges.
People added nesting sites to the buildings, and soon the urban peregrines were taking care of the city's pigeon problem.
Years later, when the peregrines became extinct, they went back to the city areas, not so much because they were the optimum place to have falcons living, but it was one of the few places where there weren't any predators.
Peregrine chicks hatched in captivity were released in the cities where they had a better chance of making it. Their cliff sites in the wild had been taken over by a traditional enemy, great horned owls. Today, nesting peregrines are a common sight in cities like Minneapolis, Minnesota. And at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, falcons have been raising young for the past 7 years. Staff members and patients in the hospital get an opportunity to watch the birds in action on closed-circuit televisions. In Seattle, peregrines have been nesting on skyscrapers since 1994, and anyone online can watch their progress. A live camera at the nest site is hooked up to send images directly to a web page on the internet.
We can either put it right in that corner or we can put it over here and run it back through the louvers.
Boise's peregrines will also have the opportunity to be television stars. A camera set up on the ledge sends images down to the lobby of the Key Bank building. In no time, the birds have built an audience. Laura Lyda checks on the birds every morning as she comes to work.
I think it's great. I've enjoyed it, so I hope they continue to make their home here.
A week after banding the offspring, it became evident that the adult male had met with some sort of misfortune and disappeared. So the decision is made to supplement the food brought by the mother each day with some commercially raised quail.
Well, the adult female just arrived. She sees one of the food items that was put up on the ledge, and now the young, having seen her, come over to get the food that she brought them, that of course we just happened to provide here a few minutes ago. And so Mom gets to take credit for that meal, which is a good deal. And of course the three young instantly mob her, and one of them grabs the food and has decided that it's gonna have that food for its breakfast.
The chicks thrive and eventually attempt to fly. But the windows and wires of a city can be a dangerous place for an inexperienced bird. One of the young females doesn't survive. But the other two offspring are soon seen about the city, strong, graceful, and wild.
I think peregrines are really special because they represent wildness in its purest form. It is a unique opportunity for people to be able to drive into a downtown area of a city and see an endangered species, literally drive up falcon nest where they can park at the steps of a state capitol and look into the future for wildlife conservation, which peregrine falcons have been probably the most highly rated and most successful wildlife reintroduction program anywhere in the world.